Hey guys, happy Tuesday. Hope you're having a good day. I wanted to talk a little bit about homeless people. I live in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and there are a lot of homeless people here. And part of the reason is because in Greenville it is illegal to be homeless, which is a little strange to me. It's like saying it's illegal to be poor. Uh, how is it illegal to be poor or homeless? It's illegal to have nothing. So are you going to give me something then? I don't really understand that. Maybe it's because I just came from Los Angeles where they have amazing programs. And, I did learn some interesting things about homelessness in Los Angeles. There are a lot of people who want to be homeless. When you have programs where they're offering you a hand up out of homelessness, but they're saying, you need to be off of your substances. There are some people who will say, well, we want to be on drugs. We want to be on alcohol. We don't want to get off of that in order to be in housing. Okay, choosing that, now I don't feel sorry for you. I'm not going to give to a homeless person who is choosing that. That is different. But I have noticed that people have very strange attitudes towards homeless people, even Christians, especially Christians. And I think maybe we need to kind of recalibrate how we think about people, because have we forgotten that Jesus was homeless? Jesus told his followers to go out into the world with no clothes and nowhere to lay their head, and basically ask people for a place to stay. And so these homeless people walking around, that would be Jesus. So when you see these people, that could be Jesus. So does that kind of recalibrate your thinking? Maybe. I see a lot of people, when a homeless person asks someone for money, that the person being asked is very rude, or they just ignore the person. And guys, these are human beings. And let me tell you, I was homeless. And it was through no fault of my own. I had a camper that I lived in, and the axle broke. And for 2 months, I was living in my truck. And my church, Revelation Church, with Prophet Lovey, actually, the ushers in the church there, I was living in the parking lot in my truck, and they told me I needed to go to a shelter. So I obeyed my church, and I went to a shelter. So that is how I wound up living in a shelter. And they wouldn't take me because of my cat. So like that whole experience of me being homeless was not due to any fault of my own. And to treat someone like they have done something wrong when you don't know their story, and when Jesus himself, the Son of God, told his followers to go out into the world, I really think that we as Christians need to change our attitudes. So I'll just share with you how I treat people. And of course, I'm not the authority on this, but there was a lady who asked me for money the other day, and I told her I don't keep cash on me, not even change. And I said, I don't have any money, but what's your name? And she said her name was Eve. And I said, hi Eve, it's nice to meet you. I'm Valerie. How's your day going? And I just chatted with her for a few minutes. And I was actually waiting for an Uber, and the Uber drove right past me because what he saw was two homeless people talking. And I said, how rude. So I texted him and I said, hey, I was just talking to a lady on a bench. And she got tears in her eyes and she said, you called me a lady instead of a homeless person. And I said, you are a lady. And I said, your homelessness does not define you. It's just something that you're going through right now. And she just openly started weeping because I was respecting her. And I said, Eve, can I pray for you? And I put my hand on her shoulder. I touched her because she is a person. I held her hand. I put my hand on her shoulder and I prayed for her. And I asked God to give her the grace that He gave me in lifting me out of homelessness. And giving her the respect of treating her like a human being was far more than money that I could have given her. I gave her respect. I gave her love. I looked in her eyes. I touched her. I treated her like Jesus would have, because that's how He treated me when I was homeless. And then yesterday, I was working at H&R Block, and we had a homeless man named Lonnie come in, and he asked if we had anything to drink. And I said, we've got a water thing right here. You can have some water. And he's like, well, that's not what I mean. And I said, Lonnie, we don't have any alcohol here, but, we've got like some hot water if you want to warm up. You can sit here for a few minutes and get warm, because he said, it's been really cold. I've been outside all day. And I just started, we were actually talking about homeless people, because there was somebody getting arrested outside. And I completely disagree with homeless people getting arrested just because they're homeless. It's really wrong if that's why they're getting arrested. If someone breaks the law, that's different, but getting arrested just because you have no place to live, what does our society come to? So anyway, he asked if we had change, and I said, no, but, I just talked to him for a few minutes and, asked him if he believed in God, and just engaged him in conversation like a human being. I asked him his name, and I told him, I was homeless in Los Angeles, and, I was lucky it wasn't cold there. So I'm sorry that you're cold, Lonnie, but you're welcome to sit here for a few minutes and at least get warm. The shelters in Spartanburg didn't open until 8, so he had to be out in the cold. But I just talked to him like a human being. I didn't shun him. I didn't act like he was an addict. Because when you're outside, when you're in a desperate situation, you're going to start to act like a person who that's all you care about. That like alcohol and things like that is all you care about. So instead of focusing on that and judging somebody on that, try to look beyond that and have compassion for that person. And one of my exes once, years ago, said to me, You know, if you were in that situation, just give them the money, because if you're homeless, like, you're suffering, you deserve to have a drink. And that just really changed my philosophy of, you know, he used to go to the store and I'd give him 20 bucks. He'd take 20 bucks for like bread and milk, and he'd come home with this sheepish look on his face, and he'd be like, I don't have any change. There was a guy outside the store, and he was homeless, and I just gave him all my change. And I had said something to him about he probably just used it for alcohol, and he's like, you know what? So what if he did? He's suffering. He deserves to have, you know, some joy in his life, even if it is just a beer. So what if he is? He's having a bad day, whatever gets him through that day. And that just really changed my reality of compassion. I believe it was the Dalai Lama that said, it's not your job to judge, it's your job to have compassion on people. And man, if people in the world, Buddhists, can have compassion like that, what more should we as Christians have? So at the end of talking to Lonnie, I asked if I could pray for him. And again, I took his hand. I asked him if I could hold his hand, and I prayed for him. And I asked God to remove his addictions and to show him his purpose and to help him overcome his homelessness and to show him the same grace that God has shown me. And I just, in my prayer, I lowered myself to the same level as Lonnie so that he could see that I did not see myself as better than him in any way, shape, or form. And I asked angels to surround him and protect him. And when I finished praying, I looked up and there were tears in his eyes, and he thanked me. And I just want to encourage you, if you're a Christian, like, treat people like human beings, because they are. And honestly, in our society today, in our economy today, most of us are only one paycheck away from being homeless. Most people today, it's through no fault of their own that they're homeless. So show compassion, guys. Try to be like Jesus. Try to look at them as Jesus would. Maybe just for one day, put Jesus on like a coat. Maybe just put your Jesus glasses on and look at that person like he would. What would he say? What would he do? Maybe just try to give them a kind word, because they are suffering. Whatever's going on in your life, like, it's not easy going through anything, but when you're homeless, just dealing with day to day, I mean, I can tell you, just trying to figure out where to pee, where to poop, it's, the basics are hard. Just trying to figure out, what am I going to eat today? And then when is it all going to come out? And am I going to be near a bathroom? All of that stuff. Where am I going to sleep? And am I going to be safe when I sleep? Am I going to have to defend myself? And, you know, there are shelters, but, you know, Lonnie was like asking, you know, I don't even have an ID. I don't have a social security card. And how do I get to these places to get it? You know, basic stuff that we take for granted. If we're Christians, we need to try to be more like Jesus. Another thing, I think it was Gandhi said, he said, I like your Jesus, but Christians, some of them are not very much like your Jesus. So a lot of times I think about that, and I try to be a lot less like a Christian and more like a disciple of Jesus. So anyway, I hope this helps. I don't think our homeless problem, if it's a problem, is going to get better until we start treating homeless people like people and stop treating them like a problem. We need to have compassion. Anyway, I love you guys. Jesus loves you. Have a great day.